We've got an update from the world of modern art today, and if there's anything you folks already know about your host, it's that there's nothing he loves more than modern art. So it was with much excitement that I read the news earlier this week that the city of Palm Springs, California will soon be unveiling something called the AIDS Memorial Sculpture. And it's a giant man-eating butthole. Don't just take my word for it, though. A few different TV news outlets did segments on this story where they showed the design to people on the street and asked for their initial reactions. And approximately 137% of them looked at the thing and said, it looks like a giant anus. But don't try telling that to the sculptor, a man named Philip K. Smith III, who claims to have spent 8 years conceiving and executing the design for the Great Palm Springs Sphincter of Doom. And I'm guessing that means he spent the first 7 years, 10 months sitting around smoking weed before realizing he only had 2 months left to come up with something to justify his commission. But that's just my guess. But in the interest of equal time and all of our collective artistic edification, because obviously we're all just a bunch of ignorant, dumbass, benighted bumpkins for thinking this thing looks like a giant man-eating butthole. So I'm going to read from the artist's statement taken directly from the official website of the Palm Springs Balloon Knot Memorial. And as I'm reading this, I want you to behold the sheer amount of grandiose, self-aggrandizing nonsense that one man can write about a giant butthole. And I'm going to do this in my very best self-satisfied modern artist voice. Quote, "The sculpture that will become the Palm Springs AIDS Memorial is intended to be a touchstone in the community. It is an artwork that is meant to be tactile, encouraging touch to facilitate connection and engagement. AIDS is about people, and the artwork has been scaled to be at the human scale. The circular torus shape inspires a connected, round, cornerless form that provides space for the community and the individual across its surface. The community face, composed of a series of varied concentric carved circles that are smooth, flat, angular, matte, satin, and gloss, evokes the quilt of humanity that is touched by AIDS. Extending across this varied topography is a series of precise matte carved lines representing the aberration in the community fabric that has bonded us together. The individual face is conceived as a series of smooth, undulating fins like water lifting. These fins are a metaphor for grief, love, hope, and time. The form of the artwork itself has a concave and convex flex to it as the community face seems to outstretch and envelop the viewer, while the individual face seems to extend outward at the center toward the viewer. It is my hope that this sculpture serves as a touchstone in the community for all people needing a space for calm, quiet, understanding, introspection, and hope." Close quote. Wow, this guy really wants people to touch his butthole, doesn't he? Now, setting aside the question of why anybody would want to make a memorial to a virus, I've got a whole series of questions that I want. What's that, Jim Eagle? No, they're going to redesign the thing because everybody thought it looked like a giant butthole? They can't do that. I didn't even get to use most of my jokes. Like how visitors are welcome to explore the inside of the orifice as long as they buy the sculpture a really nice dinner and get it very, very drunk first. Or how it's got a special kinetic motion feature where it puckers if you touch it too close to the rim. Now the entire freaking segment's ruined. God damn it. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I don't know about you folks, but I'd rather not have my butthole be a touchstone for the community. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ship at sea. Welcome to the program. I'm your eponymous host and humble servant. And never let it be said that I am unwilling to suffer for my art and my audience, because I listened to all 6+ hours of the Joe Biden impeachment inquiry hearing in the House Oversight Committee today so that you wouldn't have to. And the things I do for you people. And let's start off, as we like to do on this program, by cutting through all the spin and all the bullshit and all the obfuscation and calling things what they are. Joe Biden is a crook. Everybody knows Joe Biden is a crook. Everybody's known Joe Biden is a crook for the entire 617 years he's been in the federal government. And your host knows a thing or two about crookery because my former congressman, Randy Duke Cunningham, He went to the pokey for 8 years for being the bribe-takingest member in the history of the House of Representatives, a record which I believe he still holds. The point being, when you call down to central casting and ask for a crooked, corrupt politician who's older than dirt, Joe Biden is the guy they send you. And that makes this one a tough row to hoe for the Democrats. Even though I think I misspoke a moment ago when I called this an impeachment inquiry hearing, it's actually not that. It's a hearing whose purpose is to determine if there's sufficient cause for calling a floor vote in the House to authorize an actual impeachment inquiry. So I'm not entirely sure what the technically correct term for that is. An impeachment inquiry? Good old Republicans, always getting right to the point, never stalling, never wasting time, never kicking the can down the road, just going right straight for the jugular, having an inquiry about an inquiry, but I digress. And I know the question some of you are probably asking right now, especially if you haven't been paying close attention to national politics for as long as some of us have. And the question is, well, if Joe Biden is a crook, and everybody knows he's a crook, and they've always known he's a crook, how did he get elected to the Senate 6 times? And how come he was chosen to be Barack Obama's running mate in 2008? Well, the answer to the first part of that question is exactly 4 words long. Because he's from Delaware. He's from a little teeny tiny state. Delaware is such a teeny tiny state, in fact, that Joe Biden got elected to the Senate and re-elected 5 times with a lifetime cumulative vote total of under 1 million. In other words, this dude won 6 elections over the course of 36 years with fewer votes than it takes to get elected mayor of New York once. And voters from little teeny tiny states like Delaware, they have a perverse incentive to keep re-electing their senators forever, or at least until the guy dies or retires, irrespective of whether he's incompetent or corrupt or both, because each time a little teeny tiny state re-elects its senator, they increase the massively outsized amount of power that our form of government grants to little teeny tiny states. You elect him the first time, he gets low-ranking assignments on crappy committees that nobody cares about. But you re-elect him once, he gains in seniority and gets slightly better committee assignments. Re-elect him a second time and a third time, then he becomes a chairman or a ranking member on some halfway important committees. Re-elect him a 4th time, he becomes a chairman or a ranking member on some of the most important, most prestigious committees. Budget, Ways and Means, Armed Services, Judiciary, the committees that actually get their hearings shown on TV. And more importantly, the committees where your senator is now in a position to funnel all sorts of goodies to your little teeny tiny state, because every single thing in the Senate is based on seniority. If you just remain alive and keep winning elections every 6 years, eventually you will be one of the most powerful men in Washington. And that upward trajectory is totally unconnected to your personal character, your legislative achievements, if any, or whether you're a bribe-taking scumbag criminal with a degenerate stripper impregnating crackhead son who runs around the world picking up giant bags of bribe money for you. And the other half of the question is, how did this dude get himself on the ticket in 2008? A lot of people have asked that question and been mystified by what the answer might be, but it's really quite simple. It was, to use the parlance of our friends on the left, a dog whistle to racists. And it was also a means of reassuring the deep state that they didn't have anything to fear from Barack Obama, and they needn't take all his anti-corruption talk all that seriously. On the one hand, it was Obama saying, look, you don't need to worry about me being a dark-complected guy with an exotic-sounding name, because I picked the last living segregationist senator to be my running mate. And on the other hand, it was, well, settle down, deep staters. I know I've only been in town for a couple years, and you don't know me all that well. And I like to talk a big game about eliminating corruption in the federal government, but if I was serious about all that, do you think the most notorious crook in the history of the Senate would agree to be on the ticket with me? Of course he wouldn't. So just calm yourselves down. Everything will be fine. Business as usual. But let's fast forward back to the present day. And the President Joe Biden impeachment inquiry. Like I said, this is a tough one for the Democrats. because they all know Biden is a crook. They've known it for a long time. They know there's an overwhelmingly mountainous body of evidence of criminal malfeasance on the part of him and his entire scumbag crime family, and they know they can never, ever, under any circumstances, admit they know any of that. So in a hearing like this one, there's really one of four approaches they can take, and they used up all four of them today over the course of these 6 hours. You could almost notice them switching from the one to the next at 90-minute intervals. Maybe that was just me. So clearly they planned quite meticulously for this thing and made sure all their members were singing from the right page in the hymn book at the proper time. Approach number one, the one they opened with, is to just try and run out the clock, to gum up the works and bog down the hearing in procedural minutia. So somebody makes a motion, the chair calls a voice vote, the voice vote carries, and then you say, "No, damn it! I demand a recorded vote." So then the clerk has to pull all of the individual members, and everybody has to say yay or nay, and you can waste a good 10 minutes each time you pull that trick, which is exactly why the Democrats did it 3 times in the first hour today. Approach number 2 is, well, just accuse the other side of wanting to starve children and kill senior citizens. And the Democrats are masters at this one. It's always one of the favorite arrows in their rhetorical quiver. And today, their excuse for playing the Republicans just want everyone to starve and die card was the possibility of an impending federal government shutdown. And doesn't it tell you everything you need to know about a person? When they act like the federal government temporarily shutting down is the most terrible calamity that could ever befall the human race? The ranking member of the minority, Greasy Jamie Raskin of Maryland, he was really leaning into this one with maximum melodramatic flair right from his opening statement. He's got a screen behind him, a bright red screen with a clock counting down every second until the apocalypse. The dreaded government shutdown, when all the little kids will starve from not having their school lunches and the senior citizens will all die because they can't get their medicine. Even though all those things are totally unaffected when the government shuts down. But never mind that. The point is that you should be very, very afraid, terrified even, because this government shutdown is looming. And the only reason it's looming is because these terrible, awful, extremist MAGA Republicans are conducting this totally unwarranted inquiry of an inquiry into Joe Biden, who is a completely honorable, upstanding, squeaky clean public servant who has never done anything the least bit shady or sleazy or illegal. They just want to persecute this wonderful, decent, kindly old man, and damn it, they won't think twice about starving your grandma if she gets in their way. And if we weren't having this hearing right now, there wouldn't be any shutdown. Everybody could get their lunches and their medicine and their rent checks and everything would be fine. But those damn Republicans, they just want to kill people because that's how evil they are. Approach number 3 is deny, deny, deny. Just pretend the whole thing doesn't exist. Just insist over and over again that there is zero evidence of Joe Biden or anybody in his family doing anything remotely untoward in their entire natural-born lives. The only reason we're having this hearing today is because these extremist MAGA Republicans want to indulge their crazy right-wing conspiracy theories. And no, damn you, we haven't moved any goalposts. We would never move the goalposts, even though our party line 2 years ago was Joe Biden has never spoken to any member of his family about any of their overseas business dealings, period, exclamation point. And then, as the pieces of incriminating evidence became more numerous and more damning, we suddenly shifted it to, well, Joe Biden has never been in business with his son. And then when the evidence kept piling up and kept looking even worse, we switched to, okay, maybe Biden's kid was running an influence peddling operation, but it wasn't actual influence. It was just the illusion of influence. And Joe, he never knew anything about it. And then, when even that one became rhetorically untenable, we finally arrived at, okay, he was in business with his son, and they were running an influence peddling operation, and Joe knew all about it. But by God, you guys don't have one shred of evidence that any dirty foreign money ever went directly to Joe Biden. And we all know how this game works. They would keep saying that even if there was undercover video of Joe Biden taking a big bag of cash from some Ukrainian oligarch, and the bag said bribe money on it, and there were big dollar signs on it, and the oligarch could be heard saying, "Here is your bag of bribe money, Mr. Joe Biden." They would still say it even then, and they would not be unduly burdened by one moment of shame or compunction. And then you've got approach number 4, which is my favorite one, and probably yours too, where they just pound their fist on the table and scream the words, "Donald Trump!" over and over and over again. We probably saw that approach today more than any of the other 3, because of course we did. Donald Trump, a private citizen who currently holds no government office, had his name mentioned in this hearing twice as many times as anybody else did, including the current president, who is the one actually being investigated. It's an overused cliche to say Trump lives rent-free in these people's heads, but man, he really does. And it's not just congressional Democrats, it's the mainstream fake news performance artists, and it's ordinary Democrat voters too. If you're on social media, you see it every day. If you ask somebody about Joe Biden's corruption, the answer is, "But Trump!" If you ask them what they thought they were voting for when they ticked the box for Biden, they answer, "But Trump!" If you ask them to name one single proverbial pooch that Joe Biden has not screwed since being installed in the presidency, they answer, "But Trump!" First base, Bugs Bunny. Right field, Bugs Bunny. Shortstop, Bugs Bunny. Pitcher, Bugs Bunny. Catcher, Bugs Bunny. I always wind up thinking of that old cartoon each time I try and get a Democrat to actually defend the conduct and the performance of their own president. But they don't, because they can't. And they've all been successfully programmed and mind-controlled into believing it. But Trump is the answer to every question about Joe Biden. And we saw no shortage of that in today's hearing, up to and including the repeated frenzied demands from multiple Democrat members for Rudy Giuliani and Jared Kushner to be subpoenaed. Because some of these people, and I'm not just talking about idiot trolls on the internet, but idiot Democrat members of Congress, I think they're congenitally incapable of thinking about anything else but Donald Trump. They think about him far more often than any of his supporters do, that's for damn sure. So I think now, according to Chairman Comer, what he said at the end, who did a good job today, by the way, and so did Jim Jordan, as he always does, we've now got 5 legislative days for committee members to submit materials to be entered into the record for the next hearing. And God, based on the number of days the government takes off, that could be sometime in mid-November for all we know. So your guess is as good as mine for when the next hearing will actually be, or how many hearings it will take to get to a committee vote on whether to recommend a floor vote for launching an impeachment inquiry. And then we have to have a whole new set of these same hearings in this same committee. And then we have to have a floor vote on an actual impeachment. So maybe we'll have a resolution to this thing sometime in 2037, just in time for Joe to celebrate his 97th birthday. But knowing Republicans as I do, I ain't going to hold my breath on that. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow. Stay tuned this weekend for the Blast Radius Episode 3 and a brand new Johnny Cash parody. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn!